The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And I'm so thrilled to be able to be here with you on this Friday. And if I seem a little bit somber, it's, I'm sure that many of you have heard the news about the mom in Kalamazoo who things got too much for her. And as one of our viewers wrote to us about it, she said she attempted the unfathomable. It was too much for her. And it appears that she may have tried to end things for herself and her daughter on the autism spectrum. We're going to talk more about that later on. But it reminded me last night and this morning about how important it is to me as an autism mom who has been on this journey for a while, and to me as the host of this show, that we get help and support and information to people who need it, because we've all had a day when it felt hopeless. We've all had a day when we felt like we were completely alone on this journey. And, while there are days when that seems that that's not the truth, in that moment it feels like the truth. And it is so important to me personally to let all of you know that there are other people who are pulling for you. There are other people who care about what happens to you and your child. There is help out there. I know sometimes the path to get to the help seems so insurmountable and so unfathomable that you just want to pull your hair out and run screaming around the neighborhood going, why is this happening? Been there, done that. Not feeling like doing it. I haven't run screaming around the neighborhood pulling my hair out, but felt like doing it. And so I want to do a shout out to everybody and say, let's all hold hands in this, because it's too easy for it to get overwhelming for somebody, and we don't want things like what happened in Kalamazoo to happen to us or to other people. So, and we will talk about that story later on. If you're just joining us and you don't know about that story, we will cover it a little bit more in depth a little bit later on today. But had to start the show and say how grateful I am that as an autism parent, I got support, and that it is, I am not an autism expert, but I chair the show here and help to get your questions to experts, because it's important to me to pay that forward and to get information to those of you who are out there and who are feeling like you're alone. And I hope that those of you who are out there and are having a good day will share that with other people. We give you lots of opportunities on this show to interact and to tell us what's going on, whether it's a bad day for you or whether it's a good day for you. It's beneficial to others when you share. You can share on your Facebook. In fact, Emily's going to show you a bunch of different ways that you can interact with us here on the show. I'm going to remind you that you can watch the show live. One of the places you can watch it live is www.autism-live.com. You can see the show live now on YouTube as well, and I encourage you to go there and subscribe to our YouTube videos. We also have videos on the YouTube player now that are only on YouTube that we haven't shown on the show. In particular, there's a new Parent to Parent series that I host. They're just short videos answering questions that I had and that so many of you have written in, and they're the Reader's Digest, that when you just need like a little boost of, okay, what direction do I go in now? That's called the Parent to Parent. That's on YouTube. But when you're watching us on our live page, www.autism-live.com, there is a special feature there, a white box. It's interactive all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week now. So you can put your cursor there, you can type away, hit enter, and it shows up here on our screen. If we're during a live show, I can reference it, talk to you, you can ask questions of an expert, and we can have that immediate interaction. We don't know who you are unless you tell us, and you don't need to tell us, and it's totally free. There's no login, there's no credit card. It's not about that, right? It's about getting you an opportunity to have your voice heard, and giving us an opportunity to perhaps help you or to address the concerns that you have. But if you want us to get back to you directly and you're talking on the live feature, you'll want to identify yourself. I have a way of editing that out before I tell everybody else what it is that you've asked. So I hope that you will interact. I hope that if you're in one of those places where you feel like, you know, I always think about those sayings about when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, right? That's great. And the whole thing about, you know, when you feel like you're at the end of your rope, make some knots. Sometimes you just run out of rope, right? I think we've all been there in some way, shape, or form. I hope that you'll write into us and help us to help you. I know that there's a limit and a scope to what we can do, but let's push it. Let's push it and see how much we can all accomplish together. And sometimes it just feels good to be heard. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it just feels good to get it off your chest. I know that many of you have written and said that being able to answer the question of the day, sometimes it's just good to say, yeah, today was garbage. I was going to use another word, but I'm going to keep it PG-13 here, or G. But sometimes it just helps to say, you know, I said this the other day. I had a day, and Nancy Alspaugh Jackson and I were talking on the phone. I said, I just don't feel like a good parent today. And sometimes you just got to say that. You got to own it and have somebody else say to you, you know what? It's just one day. This is just one day. And when you know better, you do better, right? Because we have those moments. So stick with us. We're going to talk about autism from a 360-degree perspective, and it does not matter to us whether you are a parent, teacher, practitioner working with a child on the autism spectrum or a young adult on the spectrum, or whether you yourself are on the spectrum. We welcome you here. We want to be a resource for you, a beacon in a storm of maybe pointing out, here's some things that you may or may not know about. And we love it when you guys write in and tell us about resources that we don't know about. So participate. That's what I'm asking you to do, is to participate, because we can do this together. It's that thing that I like to say, the si se puede, right? We can do this. Okay. We like to start off every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is one of those things that can so easily overwhelm us. The jargon that is thrown at us by experts. They want to be helpful to us. They want to help us to make a better way on our journey. And sometimes they use words that we go, really? Really? I'm not sure. Is that supposed to help me? Because it's really not. And I will be honest that for the first 2 years after my son was diagnosed with autism, I was militant about, I'm not participating in this ridiculous jargon thing that you guys do, so why don't you say it in plain language so that I can understand it. And then I began to see that maybe that was gumming up the works and slowing things down, and not really, you know, I always talk about, we got to have an idea of where we're trying to go and what we're trying to do, and what I was trying to do is help my child. And that by refusing to participate in the jargon, maybe I wasn't getting that done. So I started trying to figure out what these terms meant, and that was even more frustrating. So that's why we do this every day. We just take one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to make some sense of it so that we aren't overwhelmed by this. And over time, we start to grow this vocabulary and know these important terms that help us to help ourselves and help our children. So having said that, our jargon term for today is differential reinforcement. Oh, yippee. This is one of those things that if you are getting quality ABA therapy, you're going to hear this. And it's one of those things that you hear it and you just kind of go, what are we talking about here? Okay, so our actual definition for it, differential reinforcement, providing reinforcement only for those responses within a response class that meet a specific criterion along some dimension or dimensions, i.e. frequency, topography, duration, latency, or magnitude, and placing all other responses in that class on extinction. Yes, that's why we take the time to do this every morning, because I don't think that most of us know what the hey nani nani this means in relation to our child. So let's take a look at what our working definition is. A little less exact, kind of makes the experts cringe a little bit, but we need to be able to know, what are we really talking about here? Okay, so it's being mindful and specific about what you're rewarding, so that only responses that meet specific criteria are rewarded and all other responses are ignored. I know I had to put it in that way because the experts made me. So here's the deal. When we start out and we're trying to teach something to somebody, we're going to start out and, like right now, I'm trying to teach my dog how to say, I love you, right? Because I have nothing else better to do with my spare time. Now, in the beginning, I needed to reward my dog for making any noise on command. She's obviously not saying I love you yet, but I have to reward her for making a noise. So I started out holding up a treat and saying speak, and I would only reward her when she made any noise whatsoever. Now, if I'm trying to get to the I love you, I can't stay in that place. I have to stop rewarding her for making all of those noises. So I kind of think of it as moving the goalposts. So in the beginning, I'm gonna give her the treat for doing almost anything that is noise related. Even if she goes humph, I'm gonna give her a treat. But over time, I move the goalpost further and further away from her. And I'm gonna stop reinforcing when she goes humph, because that's not gonna get me there. And now I'm gonna start to shape this behavior up. So now I'm at the point where before she just made any sound. Then I moved the reinforcement, the reward only comes when she would go, arr, right? Then I'm at the point where I'm only rewarding her if she makes 3 together. She goes ruff, 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 which is eventually going to sound like I love you, maybe, right? But so with our kids, if you think about it, let's say that the target behavior that you want is for your child to make their bed. And in the beginning, and you start with your 5-year-old, and you're going to reinforce them pulling up the blankets, and they're not going to smooth it all out, and you're going to go, that was a great job, you made your bed, and that's really fabulous, and you're going to give reinforcement for that on for a long time, because for a 5-year-old, they're not going to be able to bounce a quarter on it, right? But over time, you're going to say, okay, we need to pull it up and smooth it with our hand, and you're going to give them the motion of smoothing the hand, and you're not going to reward them unless they do this smoothing of the hand, and you're going to keep moving the goalpost further away. So by the time the child is 14, he's making his bed and it all looks fabulous, and you're giving the reward for that. And eventually you're just going to stop reinforcing them for doing the bed and hope that you built in enough things so that it's really reinforcing to them that their bed is made and that they love coming home and sticking their backpack on it and it's already made and it's not a mess. So differential reinforcement, I think of it as moving the goalpost. Moving the goalpost, you're going to be mindful and specific about what you're rewarding, and you're going to really be clear with yourself about, I'm only going to reward when this happens. Okay? It's not, experts are probably cringing everywhere, but for those of us working with a child on the autism spectrum, it's a great way to begin to think about this. Differential reinforcement. Okay, we always have a question of the day, and today, I love our question of the day because it's a positive assumptive question. What will you praise your child for today? And when I say positive assumptive, you know what that means? It means that I'm assuming positively that you are going to praise your child today, and I hope that you are, and I hope that there's a plan to praise your child for today. I would love it if all of you who are watching would write into our Facebook page right now and tell us something that you're just going to plan to praise your child for today. I know it sounds a little crazy because you go, well, I don't know what they're going to do yet, but we can all find something. Remember yesterday we were talking about compliance and how important it is to catch them doing something good and to pile on the praise. If we have a child, this was one of the biggest eye-opening things for me, and I love being in this building because I will hear little snippets of conversations between the behaviorists, and whenever they talk about a child who's struggling with behavior at a certain time, one of the first things I hear asked is, oh, have we piled on enough praise? It warms my heart to think that that's the way that we get the things that we want in life, is by piling on the praise. What a great thing. So let's have a plan today. What are you going to praise your child for today? I can think of 35 different things off the top of my head that I'm going to praise my child for today, but I am specifically going to praise him. I'm going to find time to praise him today for being a good listener and for listening to me, because that's something that I want to see more of. So I'm going to find every opportunity I can today to praise him for that. And even just thinking about it, I feel like I'm in a better mood. So I hope it puts you in a better place too. But let's list all the things that you're going to praise, because it'll give me ideas and it'll give other people ideas. Okay, we always have a topic of the day. And of course, you can probably guess our topic this week is compliance. And I always like to say compliance, it's one of those best of times, worst of time things. If you've got compliance, oh, it's just delicious. And if you don't have compliance, it makes for the worst, hardest, most disheartening days. So we want it, and there are ways that we can get it. And we're going to be talking about some different things today. So some of the very exciting things that we have going on in the studio today, we have Dr. Adel Najdowski. She is already here, and I have seen her. She will be joining us in just a little while, and we are going to be talking with her about compliance. A little bit later on today, we're going to be talking about a funding tip, because we know that money, unfortunately, is a big part of this journey. And then a little bit later on today, we have Science Beat with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. So all of that and more, and your questions as we continue on with the show. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more. Stick with us.
Hey guys, for the month of September, I figured I'd show you guys how to make a task completion chart to help your kids get through the hardest parts of the day. Parents have been writing into our host, Shannon, the hardest parts of the day are waking up in the morning, after school, and getting ready for bed. Please keep in mind you can always modify the task completion chart to focus on the skills that your family needs most. The template we'll be using today to make the task completion chart you can find at facebook.com/autism-live. All right, let's get to it. The materials you'll be needing are the template, cardstock, scissors, hole puncher, glue, pipe cleaner, Velcro, and photos or images. We find it more reinforcing for kids if you use images of themselves doing the tasks that you're trying to get them to complete. So what I have here to start off are photos of myself doing all the tasks that we're going to add to our task completion chart today. The first step you're going to be doing is printing the template from facebook.com/autism-live. I have it here, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim at the top. We don't need that, that's just totally excess. Now that I trim my 3 templates, I'm going to label each one with a different part of the day that we're focusing on, such as waking up, after school, and getting ready for bed. Now that I finished labeling the templates with the appropriate time of the day, I'm going to attach the photos that go with it. For bedtime, the tasks I chose were getting ready for school, putting away toys, putting on pajamas, and brushing teeth. Now repeat this for all the rest of the day. Now that I've added the photos to the template, I am taking this along with my heavy cardstock to hold all my tokens. I'm going to line them up and make 3 hole punches. I'm going to take this pipe cleaner and attach the pages together with it. We're almost done putting this together. Next, I'm going to take my Velcro. I'm going to put them underneath each picture. And then I'm going to add 4 on the very edge too. Now that I've attached the rough side of the Velcro to the template, now I'm going to take the softer side and add these to the tokens. You can use whatever you want for the tokens, whatever your child finds reinforcing. They could be stickers, images, spacemen, Pokemon, whatever they like. Before you use your task completion chart, it's really important that you do a preference assessment to see what your child finds reinforcing that day. Once you have that established, then you can tell them the rule for how this task completion chart works. So every time they get one of their tasks completed, they add a token to it. And the way the task completion chart functions is like a token economy. So after they put a token under each one of these tasks, they can trade it in for their reinforcer for the day. Now that you've made your task completion chart, hopefully your child will be able to use it on a daily basis and help them through those difficult times of the day. Well, until next time, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have a couple of news stories that we're tracking this morning, and I want to start out by talking about a case that's happening here in California in the Yuba City Unified School District with a young man who is 21 years old, diabetic, has autism, and is nonverbal. And under the state of California, in the United States, we have something called FAPE, Free Appropriate Public Education. It is something that all individuals are entitled to, and when you're on the autism spectrum, you are entitled to it beyond the age of 18. And this young man apparently was going to go back to school this fall and was turned away 2 weeks ago from attending school. And now the school district has offered the family $86,000 to settle past, present, and future complaints against the Yuba City Unified School District. You might be asking yourself, what complaints did they have? And of course, we don't know the whole story, but it's being reported that last year, there was a private duty nurse who would attend school with him because of his diabetic issues. And she witnessed last year the school trying to teach him some table manners. Now, that's not unusual. And and we've talked about this, in fact, we talked about this last week, that we can build into IEPs the ability for our children to be learning things that are appropriate for them to go into the world. Part of FAPE, part of that free appropriate, public education is for them to get educational skills, including how to get work and how to be able to work in an environment. So having feeding goals is not inappropriate. And they were working on table manners with him. Apparently, though, there was a discrepancy about the fact that this particular young man has a real aversion to metal. Doesn't like the taste of metal, doesn't like the feel of it in his mouth. Those of us who have children on the autism spectrum understand that sometimes there is a sensitivity to different textiles. And in any case, they were trying to get him to use a metal fork. I'm not sure why. And of course, we talk about on this show systematic desensitization, but this had come to a head, and it was a moment where there was a bit of a battle over it, that the young man, whose name is David, did not want the fork to go in his mouth, and they were trying to force him to do it. The nurse tried to step in and say, I don't think that's a good idea. He has an aversion to the metal. And the person from the school who was working with David said that the nurse is saying that they refused to listen to her, and they began to force him if he took the fork out of his mouth, they would shove the food in his mouth and force him until he vomited. So that's not okay, right? I think we can all agree that that is not, and especially if you have somebody there who's used to working with him, that's not what anybody should be doing. And that's a very real complaint against the school. And there are other formal complaints that were filed his iPad, which is his main form of communication, had been left out in the rain because they feared that he was bringing a recording device into the classroom. So clearly, we have a situation here where there are some complaints and the school is having some difficulties and is not capable at this point in time of providing quality services to this young man. And I think it's important that we all know that there are a lot of schools that are in over their head, that they don't have any training for the officials that are working with our kids, and they don't know what to do. That is, I think, by far the reality in schools around the world. How a school chooses to deal with it is always very interesting, right? This school, I don't know what attempts that they were making to be able to get up to speed and be able to provide services for this young man, but now they have said, look, we just aren't able to. So they're offering the family an $86,000 settlement, which means that he won't be allowed to go to school anymore there, and that they can use it to go to a private school. I bring this up especially because I want people to know that your school does have a responsibility to be able to give your child that free, appropriate public education. And when they can't, they have a legal responsibility to pay for it someplace else. There have been many people who have won lawsuits where if the school could not demonstrate that they could effectively educate the child, they had to pay for them to go someplace else. So I know the headlines are saying this morning that the autistic student is offered $86,000 to leave the California public school. That headline is a little misleading. If they cannot appropriately provide the services, they have to pay for them someplace else. I think it's disappointing that the school has waited this long to decide that they didn't have the proper setting and the proper training. And I always find it disappointing that they wait until the child has already had a very negative experience and then they want to pay for it. I wish that our schools would spend money, take the time, and train the people who work for them. Then we wouldn't need to have these kinds of lawsuits, and the kids wouldn't need to go someplace else and have it paid for. I know that it can be expensive to pay for training, but it can be expensive to have to pay for it someplace else, and it can be very expensive if a child gets hurt. Not to mention that if you are in the business of educating children, your first priority should be to keep kids safe. And if you're doing things that are causing them to vomit, I'm just suggesting maybe you don't know what you're doing. So we wish luck to Heather Houston, who is the mother of David Swanson. And I hope that the Yuba City Unified School District, while it's offering this $86,000, I hope that they take a moment to consider that they might want to spend some money to get some training. And I hope that more schools stop and think about the ramifications of not having trained people working with our kids. And as a parent, I hope that the parents out there listening keep in mind that if they don't take proper care of your child, you do have recourse. You absolutely do. They have a legal responsibility to pay for your child's education if they cannot provide an appropriate placement for your child. We are going to take a break and we'll be back with more news. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The Skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes Skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The Skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the Skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills Language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest joining us right now in the studio is Dr. Adel Najdowski. And we call this segment Real Progress with Dr. Adel. So thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
And today we're talking about compliance. And I was saying it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. We all want compliance. Sometimes we can't get it. And I would love to hear, we've been talking about it a little bit this week, but I would love to hear from an expert about your thoughts on teaching compliance.
Good question. Well, there's a few thoughts on that. First of all, you want to make sure that the instructions that you're giving your child when it comes to compliance are things that they know how to do. Okay. So you're not teaching them language at the same time as teaching them compliance. If they don't know what the word stop means, if they don't know what the word come here means, or these simple instructions, we can't just take it for granted and assume that they understand them. So you'll want to teach those and get those under instructional control first. With them getting it. Then there becomes the issue of, okay, they know what I'm asking for or telling them to do, but they're choosing not to. So what does that even sound like? Is there something that pops up to you because you know how to do it, but you're not doing it? What's the problem?
Well, to me, the first thing that comes up to mind, you're not making it worth my while.
Yeah.
If I'm not doing it, it's not worth it to me.
What's the payoff?
Yeah, what's the paycheck for
Where's
me?
the reinforcer?
Yes.
Why should I bother to do that thing you want me to do? So you have to try to think of, obviously, effective reinforcers, but also there's ways of getting kids to comply with things by even the order in which you do things. A lot of times they're asking for things. Mom, can I have this? Mom, can I have that? They're manding, right?
Right.
I will a lot of times say to my child, yeah, you can have that as soon as you finish your homework.
Yeah.
And then, oh, cool, then they're going to go do it. But also when it comes to teaching compliance, you'll want to start in the home setting probably and get compliance really good there, and then start working out into the community, because there's going to need to be compliance with safety issues. Yeah. If your child's the type that runs out into the street, for example, and you have no control over them, you're going to end up either one of those parents with a leash on your child, or you're going to need to work on compliance, get it in the home, and then move it out to the different settings.
Because it is harder when you're outside the home.
Yeah.
And maybe in a minute we can talk about some strategies for moving because a lot of parents say, they're fine at home, and then I go out in public and it all kind of erodes to a pile of poo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about that in a minute. But key being that we have to make it worth their while.
Yeah, and I would say two other key things is don't have them doing something they really prefer right when you give the compliance instruction. Okay. Not a good idea, because how are you going to get them to transition from that? You're just setting yourself up for failure. And another key one is start with compliance instructions that are highly probable the child will respond to, and then become more difficult over time. Okay. So things they're more likely to respond to, get that really good and solid, and then reinforce, and then pretty soon this is, oh cool, when I do stuff I get reinforcement.
Spectacular advice, because it is the best of times, worst of times if you can have it. Compliance, it's everything. We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we're going to ask Dr. Najdowski some strategies for once we have compliance in the home, how we might get it outside, because I do think that's the hardest for a lot of people, is when there's all this other stimuli going on, how we can work up towards having compliance in those situations. So stick with us. We're going to be right back after these messages.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity.
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with it.
IBT continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with Dr. Adel Najdowski, and if you have watched before and when we've had Dr. Najdowski on, you know I'm a big fan of Dr. Najdowski's. When I first came to do the show, they put me through my paces to begin with, and what it entailed was that an hour a day, I had a little tutorial with Dr. Najdowski where I could come in and ask questions, and she would answer my questions, and it was amazing. I think I'm going to look back and have that be one of my favorite times in life, because I learned so much that, you know, when people, because I always say here, I am not an expert, and people say, but you seem like you know a lot, and I give all that credit to you, because that was, I learned some from being a parent and having my son go through therapy, but you really were able to give me the knowledge of how and why what they did with my son worked.
Well, I remember when you came to CARD and we were going to be working together, I was so concerned that I would do my normal thing, which is get really, really busy and then basically ignore you and be no help to you whatsoever. So that's why, I don't know if you remember, but I said we're going to meet one hour every day, and I just had it as a part of my schedule because I knew then I wouldn't book anything else.
Yeah.
So.
And it was amazing, and I was so grateful for that time, and I sometimes felt guilty about it because I knew you had so many other things that you were doing that were far-reaching and helping so many other families. So I felt guilty taking the time. But
it was worth it, and it was necessary.
So worth it.
Because look at how...
Well, and I try to pay it forward. I try to make up for the time that other families didn't get with you with what I know, and I try to pay that. I'm always very mindful of the fact that I have a responsibility to pay that forward, that time. And I keep saying I'm going to write a book, Mornings with Dr. Adel, at some point, because it was fascinating.
I do have to say, though, that when you first came in, you were already very knowledgeable just from being a parent.
Well, that's really sweet of you to say, but we both know it's not entirely true.
You know, I used behavior analysis on you.
You absolutely did. You shaped me up, and I learned a lot from. And then I went home and used the same tools you used on me on my husband, but we don't tell him that. But which brings me to.
And it was a positive experience, though,
it was
right?
a very
I used a lot of
positive
reinforcement.
You did. You absolutely did. I looked forward to it every morning. I really did, and I was sad when that time ended. But it's thrilling to me to have you in the studio once a week and to get to touch base with you in that way. And so, having said all that, and I want everybody to know too that you were one of the co-creators of Skills. So for those of you who are using Skills, and we. A lot of times we save skills questions until Dr. Najdowski is here, and a little bit later we have a skills question for her. But you really have had an amazing influence on the ability for families around the world to be able to access the information that is in the curriculum that CARD uses on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And so I want everybody to know that you look incredibly young, but you've done an amazing amount of work that's really important for the autism community at this young age. So we look forward to what you're going to do with the rest of your time.
Well, the other thing to think about is I've been working with kids with autism since 1995.
Well, that just boggles my mind.
I'm pushing 40 right now.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
There must be something about working with kids that makes people look younger, because Dr. Grandpichet does not look like she could be the age that she must be either. So we all need to get jobs working with children. It must keep you young. But we've been talking about compliance, and so you've been working with children for that amount of time. You know a fair amount about compliance, and you were mentioning before the last break about starting in the home and how important it is to get those kinds of things under control in the home, and then to take them out into the community. And that really made me think about the fact that it really is two entirely different things: compliance in the home and compliance out and about. And I hear a lot of parents saying that they have it in one place or the other. Usually it's that they have it at home, but that out and about it's harder. Sometimes it's the flip. But if we take the assumption that you've worked really hard and you have the compliance pretty good at home, and now you want to start to work on it at home, what are some tips that can help us to be able to do that and have success in the community?
Well, out in the community, there's a lot more distractions and a lot more kind of like reinforcers, I guess, that pull kids in, competing things, I guess you could say. So in the home, you know, they're kind of used to the environment. Unless there's lots of reinforcers around, for the most part, it might even be dull at times and that kind of stuff. So it's like two totally different worlds. So what you can do is start in the home by making it seem more like an outside environment. So bringing in distractors. So one of the things I talked about earlier was making sure that when you provide your compliance instruction that it's a highly probable response the child will engage in. If you start with something like that and then you move towards more difficult things, and at the same time you start to bring in distractors or like other reinforcers or things that are preferred into the environment that the child has to move away to. I mentioned don't have the child doing something really preferred when you give the compliance instruction. Again, that's something that's going to be in the beginning, but if we don't get to the point where they can comply while they're doing something preferred, then they're going to go out into the community doing something they prefer and they're just not going to comply.
Okay, so an example, you know, my son loves to play video games, and if I were going to try to teach him compliance, I'm not going to start with asking him to come to me while he's playing a video game.
If that's his most preferred item, then he's probably not going to do it. In fact, he's probably going to stare at the screen and not even be hearing you at this point.
So that's the preferred activity, is the playing the video games, and in the beginning, I don't want to ask him to go from a preferred activity to something that is not as preferred, which would be coming to me to talk about homework.
Yeah, so you're best off when you first try to teach compliance of having the environment be pretty sterile so that there's a higher probability they're going to respond, and start with instructions that they're more likely to comply with. As you have success with that, then you can start bringing in things that are a little iffy if they're going to comply with.
Okay.
You can start bringing in to where they have like a somewhat preferred activity going on.
Okay.
You can start to bring in distractions like noises and other things going on in the environment. You're going to want to move to different rooms. You're going to want to have multiple people. You can't just have the child only learning to comply with his therapist, and he's like 100% on his game when he's with his therapist, but not when he's with his mom or his teacher.
Yeah, I remember the day when my husband, because my son was not compliant at all, and then we started therapy, and I was home, and while the therapy was happening, and watching on a video monitor from the other room, and listening on the video monitor, and learning things and asking questions, and then we got about 3 months in, and I had good compliance. And I remember my husband saying, I don't get it. Why does he do things for Peter and he does things for, Ryan, but he won't do, and he does things for you, but he doesn't do them for me. And I said, well, Chuck, you gotta pay attention here and start doing the things that we're doing. And then he started following the formula, and it's very interesting now. There are times when my husband actually has better compliance sometimes than I do. So I have to get back on my game.
Yeah, but just because you teach a child to do one thing in one particular way with one particular person doesn't mean now when you send them out into the world, they're going to do it with everyone else with different things. So you have to vary things. You have to vary the way the instructions are being presented. You have to vary what the actual items are they have to do them with. You have to vary who's giving the instruction, where the instruction is being given, how many distractions are present, all of these kind of things.
But Dr. Najdowski, isn't part of what's happening when we're teaching those things is that what we're doing is pairing being compliant with being reinforced, and that we have to do that over and over and over again, and the only way that we're going to get compliance when they're out and about is if we've done that thousands of times.
Yeah.
Really what we're teaching is that when you do what we ask you to do, good things happen for you.
And it's not like you're going to be reinforcing every single time your child complies with you for the rest of their life. I think sometimes people worry about that.
Yes.
Like, that's just not practical. You can't do that. In some ways, people just feel it just even feels wrong to them. I shouldn't have to reward my child. He should just do it. It's part of, whatever. But that's just not how anything works. None of us really do anything unless we get something from it. And I know people would argue me on that.
Yeah.
But one thing you're getting a lot of times from stuff is you're avoiding something aversive happening to you.
Yeah.
Like, you might go to work to get your paycheck, but you also go to work so that you don't starve and you don't get kicked out of your house, and you can pay your rent and stuff. So a lot of behaviors people do is to avoid a punisher. And I'm not saying that you're going to be punishing your child all the time, But people need to have consequences for things, or else they just don't do them.
Right.
Either they like it because they're getting something good out of it, or they're doing it because they're avoiding something bad happening.
And I will admit that because of the way I was raised, my head goes to those things sometimes, and I think, well, he should just do it because, he should just do it. We're putting a roof over his head. He should just comply. I'm the mom, and he should listen to me, right? But then I'm reminded of the fact that I can argue that till the cows come home. He's still not going to do it, and this works. And I think at the end of the day, that's the end of that argument is, well, this works and the other leads to frustration and anger.
And you can thin out your reinforcement. It's not going to be every single time, all the time. But also you can bring in your natural occurring reinforcers. So like I said, when my child asks me, can I watch TV, can I play a video game, or can I have, a piece of candy or something like that, if I would normally say, yeah, no problem to that, I'm going to just say, yeah, as soon as you do X.
Right.
And then they have to actually comply with something else to get it. And that thing I was going to give them anyways now,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Is now becoming a reinforcer.
So it's just being a little bit smarter, the way in which you do things.
Every time my kids ask me for something, I feel bad, but I look at it as a learning opportunity of like, they want something right now, that's a reinforcer. I could teach them something real quick.
Yes. And we should think of that whenever a child asks for something, it's like they're putting up a billboard going, this would be a reinforcer for me. And then you get to choose, how do I want to use this?
Yeah.
It's being smart. And what happens is, as a result, and I think we have to say this, you are happier and your child is happier. If you think about that interaction, your child comes up and says, can I have a popsicle or whatever it is? And you say, yes, as soon as you finish your homework. The child often is like, yay, I get the popsicle. And then they go and do the homework.
Well, I actually have something funny. When I was growing up, the one task that was my job always was to do the dishes. Mm-hmm. And as much as I hated doing the dishes, it was always, I would be asking to go somewhere or do something with my friends. I was in high school. And my mother would always say, yes, once you finish the dishes.
Right.
And to this day, I really enjoy doing dishes.
Wow. That's a really good thing to think. Well, when you think about it, because it was paired over and over with, do this and you get this for years.
Yeah.
It is amazing how we can, and we can do this with ourselves as well.
Yeah, you can set up self-management systems and give yourself reinforcers.
I don't want to name names, but we had a project happening here at work that was a wee beastie, a project that had to be edited. It's a lot of hours, and so somebody else here on our staff was promising somebody, get this much editing done, and then you can have a piece of chocolate. And these are people who aren't on the spectrum, and they were having a good time doing that. Yeah. But, stuff was getting done and the person was enjoying it more. And
I do have two other really cool things I could add on when teaching compliance.
Let's do it.
One is, what do you do when you give the instruction and the child just doesn't comply?
Yeah.
So there's this thing called the 3-step guided compliance procedure.
Okay.
And it's basically give the instruction vocally, and then if the child doesn't comply, then model for them what it is they're supposed to be doing.
Okay.
And then if they still don't comply within a few seconds, then you provide gentle guidance. So for example, if you told your child something like, take off your shoes, and then they won't do it or something, then you'd say, take off your shoes like this, and you could gesture toward it and show how to take it off. Or if it's something you can actually do, you can show them and then whatever. Okay. And then on the third one you say, take off your shoes, and then you take their hands and you take off their shoes. And the thing with it is that if you do those 3 steps, and I know they sound really contrived, but what happens is the child really quickly learns that, oh my gosh, as soon as you get to that model, I see what's about to happen right now.
Yeah.
She's taking me through this 3-step thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they just start complying right away to avoid going through that 3-step thing with you. In some way, I'm thinking it might be slightly aversive for them or something that you do that every single time, and so they just comply, probably to avoid that, I'm guessing. But
well, and if you think about it too, it makes it really clear. If I don't understand receptively what you're saying, and then you start modeling it, it gives me the opportunity, oh right, that's what that cue means. And if you're going to end up guiding me through it anyway, I have no escape for it, so I might as well get over it.
Yeah, there's no escape. The model makes sure they know what you're actually asking.
Yeah.
Of course, anytime you give a compliance instruction, you should make sure you have the child's attention. So like you talked about your son playing video games.
Yeah.
He probably doesn't even hear you sometimes when you're talking to him.
Yeah.
So you might need to literally walk and stand in front of the TV and get his eye contact or pause it or something before you give the instruction.
Yeah.
And then another piece of information is this thing called, high probability instructional sequence.
Oh, wow.
And it's where you deliver instructions at a very fast pace, and you do high probability ones first.
Okay.
So for example, like if they have no problem doing something like, you know, raise your arms, clap your hands, sit down, you do those fast, 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 and then you throw in the one that they're less likely to comply.
Right.
Something called behavioral momentum keeps them going, and sometimes they'll comply. It's been shown to work in some research, but it's also been shown in some cases not to work.
So it may depend on the child. I know we would do, there were times when Jem was little that I called it getting off track, that he would be, you know, just doing stuff, and then all of a sudden he'd hit a point where he, you know, just like turn off. And when he would do that, we would stop and go back to things that he knew and could do automatically.
You'd be like, easy, 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 hard. Easy,
right.
easy, hard.
So maybe we'd be saying to him about, you know, pick this one, and he was having a hard time doing it, and so he just would refuse, and then he would get angry. It would be like he knew he didn't know how to do it, and so he would start swiping stuff. So what we would very quickly go back to is touch your nose, and he would touch his nose. And if he didn't do it, we would touch his nose for him so that he knew he wasn't getting out of it. And it would only take like 3 instructions, and then he would be back on track, and we would say, okay, give me, you know, whatever it is, and then he would be back on track, and it would just be quick.
Yeah, and I think it can help get them back on track because you give them something easy they're likely to comply with. They then receive some sort of praise, maybe.
Yes.
So then that brings in a little bit of reinforcement, and then now the hard thing sneaks in, and they're already kind of in this mode of compliance now.
Yeah.
So due to that, they just end up complying. So that's something that can be used as well.
But I think one of the best things that you said today that really was a light bulb moment for me is that, because I always think of, you know, we have to be clear about, is this a teaching moment or is this a compliance moment?
Yeah.
And so if we're trying to teach something, we're just teaching it. It's different than compliance. So we're only teaching compliance when it's something that they already know how to do. Don't muddy the water and try to do both at the same time.
Right, right. And the other thing is, unfortunately, in some cases, children appear to be non-compliant when in reality they have some sort of executive functioning problem, like memory.
Yeah.
So sometimes, for example, in a classroom setting, a teacher's in front of the class and they're giving instructions to the entire class about some like thing they're supposed to be doing on an assignment, and then they stop and say, okay, everybody do it. And in some cases, you'll see the kid with autism not doing the assignment. And what does that get interpreted as? He's being non-compliant.
Yeah.
But in reality, he forgot, like a memory issue or an attention issue or something like that. So if you have a kid who seems constantly non-compliant but yet seems like a very good kid, it's not like they're being mischievous about it or something or purposefully like choosing not to comply. You might want to take a look at some possible other deficits there that are getting in the way.
shore those up. Teach those executive function skills.
Yeah, work on the attention, the memory, and the different things that are required a lot of times to be compliant.
Okay, great. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we have a question from a viewer for Dr. Najdowski about using skills, so stick with us.
Center for Autism and Related Disorders strives to make autism treatment a reality for all children. We're happy to announce the opening of our newest treatment center in Thousand Oaks, California. To schedule an appointment, contact CARD today.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Dr. Adel Najdowski, and Dr. Najdowski was one of the co-creators of Skills, and so we save up sometimes when you guys write in questions about using Skills, and we know that a lot of you are. I'm a big fan of Skills, and so somebody wrote in and wanted to know, how can I use Skills to prepare for my IEP?
Well, within the Skills system, for every activity that's in there, there is an IEP goal written, and those can be used either as the goal or as the benchmark. It's really going to depend on the child. So the way that Skills would work is you would answer the assessment questions, then based on that you get a pool of activities from which you can pick to work on with the child. And then while you're shopping around, and then once you choose those activities, all you need to do is open up an information icon, and you'll see it'll say IEP goal or benchmark. And so for about the almost 4,000 skills that we have in there, there is something like that for every single item. Now within each of those goals, there's also room for you to customize. So it'll have a place for you to put the child's name, it'll have a place for you to put the criterion that's required. So like if you're going to require 80% or whatever correct, who's going to measure it, how you're going to measure it, what settings you're going to do it in. But the actual meat of it, like what the actual thing is the child needs to learn, whether it be, you know, being able to do a certain number of math problems in a certain length of time or something like that, is already in the goal. So all you need to do then is go in and customize that.
It's really an incredible tool, and I want to say that one of the greatest things about it for me is that when you've already done the assessment, you know that this goal is age appropriate and skill appropriate for your child. It's exactly what your child should be working on, and you don't have to do any guesswork about that. It's really a fabulous thing. I use it. So I thank you so much for answering that question for us. And anytime you have a question for skills, you can write in and ask us, and we'll save them up for Dr. Najdowski on Fridays. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We'll look forward to having you next week. We're going to take a break and go to the A Word. This is the ongoing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. Take a look at him at 4. He's doing great.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast. Yes, I do. I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
Okay, Jack Riley, can you tell me? And when you're calm and nice, that makes everybody happy. And what are the pictures in this one?
Not calm, mean.
Mean. And when you're not calm and you're mean, that makes everybody
Sad.
Sad. And when you're calm and nice to Lainey, you get to have special stickers put on your day. And when you get enough stickers, you get to have what?
Cereal box.
So with a lot of our kids, sometimes they have trouble dealing with certain situations or changes. Diana wanted us to do is write a social story about being nice to Lainey, things you can do with Lainey Grace besides Pusher. The results of it is he's happy, Lainey Grace is happy, Mom and Dad are happy, therefore making him happy. And he gets the happy points on the chart. And we're supposed to write it in words that they understand. So it's pretty much we're going to be writing it together.
I made a sticker to play.
What should our story be called, Jack Riley? Should it be called Being Nice to Lainey Grace?
Yeah, that's the one you picked.
Or should it be called Lainey Grace, My Little Sister? What should it be called?
Lainey Grace and My Little Sister.
Okay, that's a good one. All right. What about your little sister? Do you love Lainey?
Yeah.
Okay. When she cries, how does that make you feel?
Sad.
Makes you feel sad. What are things you can do to make Lainey happy again?
Kiss her.
Kiss her? Okay. That's a good one. So when Lainey cries, it makes me sad. I can give her... Let's read it together, okay?
Lainey Grace is my little sister. I love her very much. Lainey Grace.
Does that sound like a good story?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Okay. You walked by Lainey doing a nice job. High five. Let's go put on a happy point. Woo! Let's
Way to go. That was a happy point, buddy.
Let's go get a happy point. Yeah.
Woo!
Happy point. Oh, this way.
So what the heck is a happy point?
A happy point is we've decided that Jack's aggressiveness with his sister is not being curbed by punishment. So we decided to really try to catch him being good, and that is where the happy point derives from. Good point here. Good example.
Good being nice.
That's a happy point. I don't even need to explain much more, do I? Well, so we're trying to teach him the good behavior, and you can't ignore the bad behavior. As you like, when he's aggressive with me, I try to ignore it. so he doesn't get attention from it. But with her, obviously, she can be injured. So we're trying to curb that by making him feel really good when he's not aggressive towards her. And I think we're having a little success, and I think we need patience because it's going to be gradual. But you just saw a good example of what we're hoping will happen more, and then eventually less.
So he earned his cereal bar.
He earned his cereal bar! Good God! Can I leave now? I gotta get my son a cereal bar. Okay.
Welcome back. That was the A Word, and I want to encourage all of you to watch that lovely series. Use it in the way that's best for you, but all of the episodes from before he started ABA therapy to a fairly recent video of him are available on their YouTube page, and it's very educational and cathartic depending on where you are on this journey. I wanted to take a moment now. I mentioned that there was another study at another story, a news story at the top of the show that we wanted to talk about. A mom in Kalamazoo has been taken into custody, and it appears that she's facing charges of attempted murder. And this is an autism mom. She has a daughter who is 14 years old on the autism spectrum, has a fairly widely read blog, and in the blog has written about some of the challenges that they have faced, has been featured before in news stories. They are in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Kelly Stapleton took her daughter in her van, and it appears that she lit some coals in the van in an attempt to end both her life and her daughter's life via carbon monoxide poisoning. And we are waiting to see as she's waiting to be arraigned, but there are a lot of people talking about this for a lot of different reasons. Her daughter is someone who is violent, has violent behaviors, and has twice hit her mother hard enough to put her mother in the hospital. I know that initially there were people who were outraged, and anytime I think that a parent is doing something self-injurious and injurious to their child, I think we all, it is natural for us to feel outrage. It is not okay. And I want to be very clear that we are not condoning anything like that. I think, there has to be a moment of compassion, of realizing this is a family that is in dire, dire straits. I think that most of us who are autism parents can relate to feeling at some moment on our journey that we're not up to the challenge, and that we aren't going to make it. I want to urge everybody who is out there, if you're feeling anything like that, to continue. I know that this mom asked for help. I know for a fact, and her daughter had just started an intensive program that was going to help to get some of the challenging behavioral issues, the injurious issues, under a certain amount of control. And she had recently said, we're not going to give up. I don't know what changed for her, but I know that this mom has been battling for a long, long time. And for me, it brings up, and I know that one of the things that she was told last fall about her daughter was, this is going to take some time. Your daughter's going to need a great deal of help. We know that we can help you, but it's going to take a great deal of time, and it's going to cost a great deal of money. From what we're reading from the story, the family was saying, well, this is how much money we do have, which was putting a financial strain on the family, but they weren't able to get the full prescription of what was being suggested that this young woman, this teenager, have in order to help her so that she's not hurting herself or her mother. And I do want to say that it as we all mourn this horrible, horrible event, and fortunately both parties are still alive, although Izzy, the daughter, is still in the hospital and there's some concerns about her. I hope that we can get this better. I hope that we can do a better job for other families. And I want to say a big shame on you to the insurance companies that aren't funding these therapies. And I also want to say to all of the people who have ever said to me, when I have said to them, do you realize that autism gets less funding than pediatric AIDS, diabetes, and pediatric cancers, and there are more kids combined than all three of those together who have autism, and yet it is uneven in terms of the funding on any playing field. And the people who have responded to that saying to me, but you realize that autism is not fatal. And I would remind you that yes, in some ways it can be for more people than just the child. So I hope that we can do better than having these kinds of things happening. We are not condoning, and there is no excuse for trying to do injury to a child. There isn't. But in moving forward, I hope that they get this mom some help, because clearly she needs it. And clearly this mom has been trying for a long time, and clearly she loves her child. I hope that this family gets help, and I hope that some of these funding sources realize that they have lives in their hands, that our kids are worth it, that our families are worth it. And I hope as a community that we rally around that. That there are enough problems in that family without pointing further fingers. So that's where I'd like the conversation to go to, is how can we prevent this from happening to one more family? We're going to take a break and come back with more Autism Live after these messages.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior,
Jonathan's not here
and
yet,
progress
right?
tracking, and it
It's
does this
time
all
for
in one
funding.
place. The Skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes Skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The Skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the Skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. You know, on Fridays we talk about funding at some point, and today I want to give you the big secret. If you've been sitting there thinking, I don't know what the secret is, how are people able to afford to fund ABA programs for their child? How are people able to get this done? How did they find the money? What's the big secret? If you've been, and I know there was a while when we started out that I would walk down the street and think, how there must be a secret. How did people figure this out? And I'm going to tell you what the secret is. The secret is deciding that you're going to do it. Decide that you're going to do it, and that you're never going to give up, and that you're going to keep looking for funding sources, and you're going to keep asking questions, and let everybody know we're funding. And if your child needs a 40-hour program, that's what my child needed when he was diagnosed. And I would go to everybody and say, we're going to do 40 hours in the home. That's what we're going to do. And people told me I was crazy. And I would go, yep, absolutely crazy, but that's what we're going to do. And you know what? That's exactly what we did. Because when you decide that you're going to do something, and I'm going to be very honest with you and tell you that we spent exactly $0 of our own dollars on the actual therapy. We didn't pay a single penny for the actual therapy. And I was told, you're not going to get that. You are not going to get that. That is not going to happen. But we did. And I was told by other parents, that's what you have to make up your mind to. And I've seen that with so many other people. So the first thing is you make up your mind that you're doing it, and because you're going to get told no so many times, it's going to make your head spin. And if you're ready for it and you go, all right, I'm going to be told no, but we're still going to do it anyway, you'll be ready for the no's. And you can start, you can make notes, make little hash marks on a kitchen cabinet and go, oh, we got another no. Great. We're that much closer to when we get the yes from who. It's going to be different for every people. And every person in every place around the world, I wish I could give you the cookie cutter, oh, this is the number you call, and this is how it's going to go, and this is what's going to happen. It doesn't work that way. But if you make up your mind, we're going to make it work, we're going to make it happen, we're going to figure it out, it will happen. Now, we've said before on the show, really important that you stay up on what your insurance status is. And it may be that 3 months ago or 3 weeks ago, you called and said, are you funding our insurance? No, you're not. Okay, thank you. On the one hand, I would say to you, it's important to make those phone calls. Make sure that you're using your time wisely, though. And I would suggest to you that your blood pressure, it cannot handle, unless you are a super person, calling your insurance company on a regular basis as often as you're going to need to do it to get the right answer from the right person. I want to encourage you, find your ABA provider first. Find the ABA provider of your dreams that you want to work with, and then ask them to check your insurance status, and ask them to keep checking your insurance status and keep after it. We were talking just yesterday about the fact that things have changed in New York again, and things keep changing. And it's so disheartening to me that there are families in New York who don't know. They asked 6 months ago and they were told, no, you can't. There's no provider that qualifies under the insurance, so you're not going to get insurance, right? Maddening stuff. But guess what? They signed a different law now, and you have the ability to get your ABA now. But there are parents and families out there that don't have that information and haven't started. And it's not just New York State. There are other states too. There are somebody listening to me right now that could have their ABA program funded by another source, and they aren't doing it because they don't know about it. I want you to get up. I want you to go to a phone, call your ABA provider, ask them, hey, can you check, do we have insurance reform right now? If you're in New York, I can tell you that things just changed for you, and that there are so many families that have funding now who are not using it. There are two things that you should know. There are two events coming up that can help you to figure this out. One of them is on the 26th. Bryce Myler will be doing the New York Insurance Funding for Autism Seminar in Fairport, New York. And then, so that's on a Thursday night. And then on the following Saturday, there is, they're calling it the Special Needs, is that what they're calling it? It's a conference, but it's happening in Glendale, New York. It's the Autism Today conference. That's what it is. And both of these things, you need to RSVP to them. You can find them. I went to check where you'll find it on the centerforautism.com page. Go to centerforautism.com, click the events tab. You'll see the calendar, and you'll see they're on the 26th and 28th of September. You can then click on them. They're interactive, and it will give you the full information about it. Make sure you RSVP key because I think they're close to being full. If you are in New York and you want to know more information, you'll want to go to those events. If you can't get to those events and you're not in New York, Bryce Myler, who is going to be doing those 2 events, is going to be with us on Tuesday, in the second hour of Tuesday. So you'll want to be with us for that. But I'm telling you, the secret is making the decision. You make the decision, and then you will find the resources to do it. You will. It will take a while, and you're going to get told no. And if you've already made the decision, you will be impervious to the no. And you'll go, yep, I expected that. I thought that was coming. Who do I talk to next? Who do I need to talk to make this work? But I tell you, the best first person to talk to is your ABA provider. Ask them to get on the horn with your insurance company. They are used to talking to insurance companies. They get to push the button, are you a provider, which gets them immediately talking to somebody who knows what they're talking about. When you and I call, sometimes they'll use a word that we're not familiar with, and we get to talk to somebody on the phone who wasn't authorized to give us a yes anyway, who isn't going to be trained in whether or not we actually have insurance reform on our insurance for 3 more months. So don't waste your time, use your time effectively, get on the phone, call that ABA provider, ask them to double check your insurance. Even if you had them check it last month, chances are it may have changed. It doesn't hurt to check. And then if you check and they say, no, you don't have it right now, move on to the very next thing and start applying for grants, and ask your local support group how they get their insurance funded. You can do this. I've seen too many people do it, and for goodness sake, if I was able to figure it out, I know for certain that you can, because I know you guys teach me every day. You are so much smarter than I ever thought about being. Okay, that's our word on funding today. Make up your mind. Get it done. You can. It's worth it. You're worth it. Your kids are worth it. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back after these messages.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of my mind, you know, where is he? What is he doing? Is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting 2 battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle. Without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, Act Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready?
There you go, got it. Mark it.
Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear Act Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. You know, we underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest in the studio right now is Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
We call this Science Beat with Dr. Tarbox because you are someone who's involved in research. You are the head of research development for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders and the director of the Autism Research Group. I'm saying that to you as if you don't know. I'm sure you're aware of these things. And you have extensive experience working with individuals on the autism spectrum. In particular, kids. I think you would say that...
For the most part.
For the most part. Yeah. But you're such a wonderful resource, and you always give us the science perspective of things. And so it's always a delight to have you here. I wanted to start today with a question that we've had a lot of questions that have come in because it was a short week this week. A question having to do with eating paper.
Sure.
Somebody wrote in and said, "My teenage daughter eats paper. I don't know when or why it started, but I'm concerned. Is it just an autism thing?"
Yeah, great question. Mm-hmm. So what she's talking about is ingestion of inedible objects, which is the technical jargon term for that is pica, right? I don't know why we need a strange name for that, but of course we have a strange name for everything. There's a name for everything, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's
good
pica,
to know.
Ingesting inedible objects, and I always like to try to kind of point out the positive wherever I can, and although maybe that seems ridiculous to the parent who's dealing with this problem and it's stressful, but on a positive note, eating paper is probably the least destructive form of pica. Other forms that are actually fairly common are things like eating cigarette butts, eating rocks, dirt, all the way up to car keys, batteries, you name it. I mean, there's really severe cases of pica documented. So paper is one of the more innocuous forms, probably, although of course paper is manufactured with all sorts of chemicals too, and it tends to be somewhat dirty, so you probably don't want your kid eating too much paper.
Right.
Right, so there is some research on pica out there, and what it's usually found is that usually individuals on the spectrum or individuals with developmental disabilities engage in pica because it produces some sort of satisfaction, some sort of automatic reinforcement or self-stimulation. Not in every case. There might be other reasons why a person is doing it too, but that's sort of the most frequently documented cause of pica. So you can almost think of it as sort of just another self-stimulatory behavior for a lot of kids.
And so how do we stop it?
Right. So as we talk about all the time on your show, automatically reinforced behavior or self-stimulatory behavior is the most difficult behavior to treat, right? Because anytime the individual wants to do it, they can do it, right? And it produces its own satisfaction. So it tends to be very hard to replace the satisfaction or eliminate the satisfaction that the kid is getting from the behavior. So really what works the best is trying to block the behavior whenever it happens, which I'm sure she's already doing, obviously, right? But the more frequently and the more consistently you can do that, the better. But that's sort of a reactive strategy, right? That's sort of waiting until the behavior is already happening and it's already an emergency in the moment, and then you do it. So blocking is not really the main solution. The primary solution is giving the child something else to do that will provide some sort of similar stimulation that he or she might like even more. So research that has been done in the past on pica has done things like provide the child with some other sort of oral stimulation. So even eating a snack, if it could be a somewhat healthy snack, then then if you eat a lot of it, hopefully that's not too bad. If the kid likes celery, that might produces a lot of oral stimulation when you snack on it. If there's particular times of day when the behavior is very likely to occur, those would be the times when you really want to make sure you have those alternative behaviors or items or activities to engage in. There's other types of toys that produce oral stimulation. Even chewing gum might be an option, depending on if the kid's going to swallow the chewing gum. But basically anything else that the kid can do with their mouth that's less dangerous than eating paper, provide that and encourage it.
And you brought up toys. You're talking about the little oral stimulator things that are meant for being in the mouth.
Yeah,
is that right?
sort of teething rings, things like that. You've talked about necklaces, right?
Yeah, there's jewelry. They call it jewelry, which I think is clever. It's all non-toxic and meant for being able to withstand being chewed on. And some of it is designed to look like I could wear it and you wouldn't think it was funny.
So that would be a great option.
And then they have a bunch of those ones that vibrate. They have things that pencil toppers that are meant for, and they actually stimulate the gums and things, which is better than eating paper.
Right. And some of your viewers might be thinking, well, I don't want my kid chewing a chew toy like a dog. It's not socially appropriate. And of course that's true, and so you don't want to depend only on that, but as one tool in your tool belt, right, as one thing that will help prevent your child from eating inedible objects, which is a health hazard, it might be a reasonable choice, reasonable thing to start with.
And eventually you could start to fade that out as well.
Sure.
But it could be a quick answer. Okay, great advice. Appreciate that so much. We're going to take a break and we're going to be back with more of your questions and asking them of Dr. Jonathan Tarbox after these messages.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And listen, I have to say, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Right now in the studio we have with us Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and we call this segment Science Beat because Dr. Tarbox is very heavily involved in research having to do with autism. In fact, the Autism Research Group, of which you're the director, you have a website and you encourage parents and practitioners to go there and ask what they would like to see research done on, correct?
Absolutely, yep.
So if I know for years I would sit there and say, look at this study that somebody funded and they paid all this money, and why aren't they doing this kind of study? And my mother would always say to me, well, why aren't they doing that kind of study? And I would say, because nobody asked me, right? Well, none of us can say that anymore because Dr. Tarbox and the Autism Research Group are asking us what we would like to see research done on. And you really base the decisions, what you're going to research on what will actually make a difference for families, correct?
That's right. So we take families' feedback and families' input very seriously, and that's the whole point of Autism Research Group, group is to do research that directly impacts real life, quality of life type issues for families.
Well, I appreciate that. And I hope that you guys, if you have something that you'd like to see research done on, go on to their site, autismresearchgroup.org. Okay. We have more questions that have come in throughout the week. I want to go to this next one. This is a great one. How do you prepare a 3-year-old on the spectrum for a 6-hour plane ride?
That's a tough one.
You start with prayer.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And you hope that everybody else on the plane has had their prayers in order too, and is calm.
Right.
But honestly, what do we do
Right.
to help?
So, well, the first thing I would say is, we talk about when we need to pick our battles, right?
Yeah.
So something like a plane ride is not a good time to work on something with your kid. That's a good time to just try to have your kid enjoy life as much as possible, and you enjoy life as much as possible. So basically what that means is give him what he wants, right? And don't do it, and some of you parents might be thinking, well, I don't want to spoil him. I don't want to just give him whatever he wants when he's being a brat or something like that. Well, the point is, give it to him when he's not. Give it to him before he's upset, right?
Right.
And so as long as you're basically giving the kid as much of what he wants as you feasibly can during that plane ride, he's much less likely to become upset and then try to do something inappropriate in order to get what he wants.
Okay.
So in behavioral jargon, we call it establishing operations, which means you're removing the motivation for the kid to get upset.
Okay.
So if the kid wants something, then he's likely to get upset in order to get it, right? So don't make him want stuff. Make him not want stuff.
So we're going to get there before he or she wants something by just showering with, it's going to become a circus environment on the plane.
Right.
Before.
Pretty much. And, it's a matter of, make sure he is not hungry at all during the time when you're waiting in line to get on the plane, and during the first 15 or 20 minutes before you can get up, make sure he's not hungry. Make sure he's not restless, right? Do a few laps around the terminal before you get on the plane, right? Get his energy out or whatever.
Run those yayas out. That's what we call it. Run the yayas out.
Exactly. And make sure, that he's well rested. I mean, just all the basic stuff. Your kid, all the stuff that you know is going to make him grouchy, just eliminate all of that beforehand.
Yeah.
And of course, that's easier said than done, right?
Right. But we just flew a lot this last year, and one of the things that I learned by the last plane ride was that to give my son a bunch of liquids once we got into the terminal, but to go to the bathroom right before we boarded, to wait until and he's not 3, but they do all the calling people up, and if you're number 6, group 6, come up, and we could have boarded early, but that was a bad strategy for me personally.
Because then he has to sit there, right?
Right, and you really can't get up and be going to the bathroom.
Right.
So we would be the last people to get on the plane, and I would make sure that I timed it when they started to call the first group. That's when we would run to the bathroom, and I would know where it was, use the bathroom, and then come back and get in line. So we had the least wait in line, and we wouldn't do, because one of the first plane rides, we were taxiing, and he says, I got to go to the bathroom right now. Well, you can't.
Yeah.
Well, you can't. We don't have a choice. You don't understand. Mommy doesn't have the option.
That's right.
So, I think it was Dr. Granpeche once who talked about bringing her kids on a plane overseas when they were little, and going to the dollar store and buying a bunch of gifts and wrapping them in tin foil.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know anymore with going through the
TSA or whatever.
TSA, maybe you wrap them in something else that doesn't involve metal, but something that takes a long time to unwrap.
Well, and it has to be things that they can open up. You actually can't bring wrapped packages on the plane, because on the security line, if they need to open it up,
so things are much different. I'm glad you thought about that.
But even if they do need to open it up, bring some tape to tape it back shut after they open it up, or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe you have them help wrap them before you get on the plane while you're waiting. I don't know.
Yeah, but multiple things to keep them busy.
Yeah.
The other thing is to anticipate times when you know that they're likely to get upset. So one major thing that a lot of families do, which I think is a great idea, honestly, is bring a portable DVD player with headphones and just let them watch whatever movie they want to, even if it's the stimmiest, most ridiculous thing they've watched a million times. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
We're just trying to get through this plane ride without everyone going crazy. So let them watch that. But if you're going to do that, you got to know the first 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes are going to be rough, right?
Yes.
Because that's when you need to close all your electronics and have everything turned off. So you better have your big guns saved for that first 20 minutes and that last 20 minutes, right? Whether it's
Good
a preferred
advice.
snack or a toy or a puzzle, whatever it is,
you're
but
gonna
it's got to
trade it
be
for.
something. Yeah.
And to prep them for it, I think with littler kids, it's got, as you were saying, you've got to have something that's a bigger gun to be able to trade it with.
Right.
I know with my son, we were constantly talking about, here are the rules, and the pilot will ask us, this thing will say, you know, we have to turn it off, and he means it.
Right. Yep.
And it has to be turned off at this time, and then you can have it back on. But having the backup of this is what you get to play with while that's happening.
You know, and maybe, you know, some folks might be thinking, oh, this is going to be a great time to work on homework or to work on educational activities or something. Forget it, right? I mean, unless your kid enjoys that. If they enjoy that, great, do it.
Yeah.
But it's not a time to do anything other than make the people in the family relaxed and happy.
Yeah, and then just getting through, as you said, getting through the ride. I see a lot of people on planes now, the plane, you know, get up and they take off the fasten seatbelts and they'll walk kids up and down the aisle.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason why our kids can't do that. And I know that Dr. Grampuchet once shared a story on the show about the fact that on an overnight flight, she had to take her young one into the bathroom and just let her scream.
Right.
Go, if you're having that kind of issue, go in the bathroom, let them scream it out.
And you know, that prompts me to mention probably the most important thing that actually you've mentioned in previous shows, which is it's not your job to make other people happy.
Yep.
It's not your job to make the rest of the passengers on the plane understand what you're going through.
Yep.
It's your job to take care of yourself and take care of your kid. And some of the passengers are going to misunderstand what's going on.
Yep.
And they are going to be thinking, oh, look at that bad parent. She can't control her kid.
Yep.
That's just a fact. We can't avoid that. So what you can do is give yourself a break from caring about that,
Yep.
right? And just
My
remind yourself,
mantra-
it's not my problem.
Yeah, my mantra is other people's opinions of me and my child are none of my business.
That's it. That's the
and
one.
sometimes
Yeah,
I just have
great.
to, like, you know, get in that Zen moment and I'll be muttering it to myself as I'm going through something.
Yeah.
Other people's opinions of me and my child and my parenting are none of my business.
That's right.
They aren't.
No, they're not.
They just aren't.
And the fact of the matter is, kids do sometimes have tantrums on airplanes, and they do scream at the top of their lungs, and it does drive everyone nuts. That's just part of flying, and everyone on the airplane knows it. And of course, everyone on the airplane is frustrated about it and doesn't want to have that experience, but too bad. Sometimes it's going to happen. And so if it happens to you, it's not something to beat yourself up over.
And if I really get into that mindset where I'm concerned about it, I remind myself that absolutely everyone on the plane was a child at some point, and probably half of them are currently parents. And if they can't access the compassion that should involve, then really I don't really care about their opinion of me.
Yeah, too bad for them.
Yeah. So great, super advice. You're just on a streak here today. So we're going to take another break and we're going to be back with some more questions for Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. And the live feature is open now. If you have a question, now's a great time to ask. Stick with us.
I'm Max Burkholder. Autism is a neurological disorder. It's an epidemic that affects more American children today than pediatric cancer, childhood AIDS, and juvenile diabetes combined. But there is hope. Research proves that intensive treatment can benefit the lives of children with autism and their families. ACT Today is a nonprofit organization that provides funding for families that cannot access or afford the treatment that can help their children reach their highest potential. To learn how you can make a difference and help a child, visit act-today.org.
Welcome back. Dr. Tarbox and I were just talking about the facts that that's Max Burkholder from the show Parenthood, and he plays a teenager who is on the autism spectrum. And I was saying to Dr. Tarbox that the first time I attempted to interview Max, we were at the 25th gala for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and I had a radio show, was there covering it for the radio show, and there were a lot of people there that I was, asking, can we interview? And Max is such a good little actor, and he takes it so seriously about portraying Asperger's and being on the autism spectrum with reality, that there was a moment I said he had just done his thing on the stage and introduced the act that he was going to introduce, and he came down off the stage, and I said, can I interview you right now? He said, can we do it later, because I just need to, there's a group that's going to be performing and I need to watch them, because he wanted to make sure that he was responsibly,
right.
And at the time, I don't think he could have been more than 11 or 12. And I thought, what a responsible little actor, and he does a very good job of portraying this young man on the spectrum. And that's why, because he's been very busy watching kids on the spectrum, asking them questions, asking parents questions. So a remarkable young man and an outspoken advocate for our kids. So we thank Max Burkholder for all of those things and for being on Parenthood, which I love.
Great.
Do you watch the show Parenthood?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
It's a wonderful, wonderful show. I'm sorry that this will be their last season. They've already announced that this is their, they're putting paid to it, but it's been a lovely, lovely thing, I think, for all of us who have kids on the spectrum. I said it started so many conversations. I would have friends that I hadn't found the way to explain to them what I was going through as the parent. And I remember there was one episode in particular that dealt with Halloween. And I had so many phone calls from friends around the country who called and said, is this what you're going through? And I was able to say, well, not this in particular, but yeah.
But kind of, yeah.
Yeah, this is what I'm going through. And it hadn't occurred to them. And I hadn't found the way to tell them. So I always thank the Parenthood people for making that possible. Starting the conversation, because how do you explain to people, no, this is what I'm going through. Okay, we had some other questions here. I digress greatly. I apologize. Okay, let's talk a little bit about anger issues.
Sure.
We had a question that came in and said, can you give me some tool in which to help the anger issues going on in my household? My son, age 13, with ADHD and Asperger's, and my daughter, age 15, with ADD and anger issues, have been escalating with such anger it is making the whole household toxic, and I don't know what to do. And I'd like to say, and remind everybody that, first of all, nobody on the show can give child-specific advice. That would be an impossibility, because there's no way we can get enough information. And I'm sure that when you start talking about a 13-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl not getting along, I'm sure that all your friends are saying, oh, that's so typical. That happens in neurotypical kids. That happens all the time. And I think that on the one hand, that's a great thing to state, because that is true.
It's true, yeah.
It's absolutely true. I'm sure that there are elements of it when your kids are on the spectrum that make it harder for you and for them, and more likely that if left unaddressed, it would last longer than the neurotypical 13 and 15-year-old siblings fighting with each other. So I'm sure people mean well when they say that, well, and it's always good to know, okay, it's not that so far outside the realm of where my kids would be behaving.
Right.
But having said that, how can we deal with teenage angst, teenage hormones, and the anger when our kids are on the spectrum?
Right. Well, and I'd have to say, first of all, it's not really my area of expertise. Definitely my area of expertise is more with younger children and probably more severe disabilities. But probably a lot of what could be going on has to do with the two siblings not seeing things in each other's shoes, not seeing things from each other's perspectives at all, right? It's always, and frankly, even most fights amongst typically developing adults, it's about how I'm right and you're wrong, and you don't understand me, I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy. But both parties always think that, right? So both parties are wrong, right? Or maybe both parties are somewhat right. But either way, it's never just bad guy versus good guy. It's ridiculous, right? It's a childish way to look at things. But even most marital disagreements come down to that, right?
Right. It's all about perspective taking for really all of us.
Right, exactly. And so I would bet my bottom dollar that in this case and similar cases like it, the two siblings just aren't even on that page of perspective taking at all. And that is a very common deficit amongst folks with Asperger's and other ASDs, is even if they're very, very smart, even if they have advanced intelligence, great verbal skills and everything else, still there could be a major deficit in perspective taking. And so there isn't a lot of great research on how to teach that, especially amongst teenage angst situations in the home, and I'm certainly no expert, but I would probably begin by sitting them down and saying, okay, how does this other person feel? Why do they feel that way? How would you feel if you were having the same thing happen to you? So you don't like the same things that she likes, but what if the things that you do like were taken away? Or what if the things that do matter to you were messed up for you by this other person? Now pretend you're her, and now you pretend you're him. So basically just prompting to directly think about and talk about what it's like to be in the other person's shoes. Now, whether that'll actually make a difference, I have no idea. But it couldn't hurt. I mean, at least it's going down the right path of trying to create commonality, right, between the two warring factions.
And also, you know, having been a teenager a really long time ago, I have a faint memory. But I had 2 siblings, and we were all close in age. And one of the battles that we had about constantly was needing a space in which to be. That there can never be enough space. I will tell you, still now, as a about to be 51-year-old woman, I have the ability now at this age to verbalize to my husband and son and say, I need everyone to give me this much space for this much time. I did it last night. I after we ordered food and sat down in a place to eat, and both of them were asking me questions at the same time, I held up hands and said, I need no one to speak to me or get on my side of the booth for exactly 2 minutes. And everybody backed up, and Jem sat there and he counted down the 2 minutes and he said, your time is almost up. Right?
So cute.
But can I tell you that when I was a teenager, I wouldn't have had the ability to say that. I just would have growled at somebody or yelled and said, leave me alone. I was close to that last night, but I hadn't quite gotten that far. It was just, nobody talked to me. I'm sure that the people in the Sharkies thought I was crazy.
But you know, that's a really great point, and that is something that you as parents, we can't really control your teenagers, but at least that element is something you can control. Like right now, this person gets this computer and no one else does, and no one talks to this person. Or this person gets this room and no one else is allowed to go in there for the next, even if it is 10 minutes.
On the timer.
Put it on a timer. And it's not negotiable. It's just the way it is. And of course, make sure that both parties get their own alone time. And it might be fighting over access to limited resources, like who gets to use the bathroom to get ready. You know what I mean? Well, it's your house. You're in charge. Make a schedule. This 20 minutes belongs to this person. This 20 minutes belongs to that person. Not negotiable.
And do we want to institute something too to be able to verbalize what they're feeling so that we don't go to anger as quickly?
Absolutely.
You know, so whether and I think every household is different and every kid is different. Whether it's something you can hold up a card that's you know the blue card that means that for 2 minutes you get 2 minutes of alone time where nobody is talking to you or whatever. Finding some way of communicating when people have reached a limit, because thank goodness somebody finally taught me just a couple of years ago. I want to say to be able to say I need a minute. I need a minute, folks. And I only have one child. I can't imagine for my friends who have multiple children and they're all talking to them at the same time, and you just feel like, you know, tennis balls are bouncing off of your face when they're talking to you, you know? We all get into those moments. And, you know, and fortunately, I can say I need a moment and the other people listen, but that took a little training too. But so maybe instituting some sort of policies along, looking at where the thread starts, whether the argument is over space and giving communication and space and,
those are all
and
good
perspective
points.
taking.
And maybe the general point too is identify what they want and teach them the right way to ask for it, a calm, appropriate way to ask for it, and that's the only way they can get it from now on, period.
There you go.
So if you want to use the bathroom to get ready, but you're screaming about it, sorry, you don't get the bathroom until you calm down and you ask nice. Like that's just the way it is, right? You know, or if you want to be left alone or whatever it is, it needs to be said in a calm voice, and that's when you get what you want.
Gosh, I needed to hear that today too, because I can remember the first time that I heard a therapist, Peter Farrig, saying to my child, I will talk to you when you talk to me in a proper voice, to my son. And then my son immediately modulated his voice, and I went, oh, that's a cool trick.
That works.
That's a really cool trick.
And it's actually a trick that works regardless of age. It's not treating someone like a child. I mean, even adults should be treating each other with respect. There's no excuse for screaming at each other. So that's that.
Yeah.
Your words don't count if you're yelling.
Yeah.
I can only hear them if they're calm.
And it doesn't even have to be yelling, it can be tone. I mean, what
Right.
started the whole thing in the restaurant last night, where I got to the point where I was like, was that, I was being spoken to by my 10-year-old son in a tone that was not something I was appreciating.
Right. Yeah.
And that I do have the ability, you just reminded me that I have the ability as the adult in this situation that I can say, I will be happy to talk to you about that as soon as you speak to me in a way that is a nice tone.
Yep.
And that I don't have to be mean about it or pissy about it. I
Totally
can just say,
it's not punishment.
hey,
it's just, sorry, I can't hear you.
I will be
I don't
happy to
understand.
talk to you about that when you speak to me in a tone that's nice and respectful and friendly and appropriate.
There you go.
Okay, but the teenage years, bless your hearts, I am not there yet. I just don't even know. And when you have multiple and they've got other things going on, you probably need a hug. And so we're sending you the air hug. We'll do the two-handed air hug and make sure that you are getting a break. I'm going to say that
That's
because
a really good point.
your ability to deal with it is going to be directly related to how much time you've had away from it. So make sure that you're asking other people in the family or friends or whatever to deal with it, or while they're at school, take a moment. Even if you have to sit in your car and take a moment and go to the fuzzy warm place where nobody is yelling at each other. It will help everyone in the long run. All right, we're going to take a short break and come back more with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox after these messages.
Hi, I'm Sandy Oshiro, and I'm here with Kathy Gaw of Danny's Farm. Tell us a little bit about the programs and what you provide here.
Danny's Farm was founded in 2007, sensing the growing need for adults aging out, needing employment opportunities, and wondering ourselves, what is Danny going to do when he grows up? That was the birth of Danny's Farm, to have a safe, nurturing, loving place that serves children and employs adults with disabilities.
Louis has been here for about 5 or 6 years. We were looking for a place we could have him after school that would help his social skills. They help him with his accountabilities in terms of taking care of the animals. I think having the petting zoo here has been a great help for him.
I'm auntie to Tatiana Munoz, and she just loves the animals, and it does help her to react really good. And since she's nonverbal, it seems like she relates with the animals even better.
There's things here that he likes to do, and he's really made some great friends here.
He has like this inborn compassion, and to see him with other kids when he starts to warm up with them and then see how he likes to take care of the animals. It's like, I know that's one of his strong points, and he gets to kind of nurture that here and express that.
We hope to see him working with Danny's Farm one day, and, it gives us hope.
Well, Danny's Farm has been in my life for 4 years, and it's a very wonderful experience. It's downright amazing, and I just love taking care of kids. And most of the time, I'm usually just trying to make sure that the animals don't bum rush the guys.
To keep the kids safe?
Yeah, that's my primary goal. Think of me as the enforcer of the farm.
Do you love Danny's Farm?
Love it with all my heart. I can go there any day and never be bored. If you want to have a wonderful animal experience, come on by to Danny's Farm, all the way down in Pomona. Thank you very much for visiting. My name is Danny Gott, signing out.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest is Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. And Dr. Tarbox is the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and also the director of the Autism Research Group. He is a wonderful expert in the field of autism and very involved in research, and had been working with individuals on the spectrum, in particular children, for a long time now. So we're taking questions from our live audience. We had a question. Our son regressed into autism. So now whenever he has even a small regression, I start to panic. Is it normal for a child to regress, and is there something to do to prevent regression?
Okay, so I'm not entirely sure what they're what they're saying in terms of like current regression. So they regressed into autism, and then perhaps they're in an ABA program and they're making progress, and then maybe they're seeing slight backslides in some of the progress. If that's what they're talking about, that's completely normal. We see that all the time. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything about it. It means that those particular areas of sliding back or regression or sort of mini regressions are particular areas where your ABA treatment provider needs to really be aware of and focus on, right? But you know, again, it's just like any typically developing kid. If you don't practice a skill for a while, you start to lose it, right? So if you're learning a second language and you never practice it, you're going to regress in that second language, right? It's not an emergency. It just means you need more practice, okay? And you need more learning to occur, more teaching to occur with respect to those particular skills. So if you notice particular areas of regression, mini regressions, then make sure your treatment program and your education program focus on those areas in addition to the rest.
Well, I love hearing that. I will say that my son regressed into autism too, that he had already been speaking in sentences and he regressed slowly into autism. And while he was regressing, I kept saying, something's wrong. Something's wrong here. He was saying more words before, and I was talking to the pediatrician, and everyone said, you're overreacting.
Right.
Everyone, because I'm somebody who worries constantly anyway. I mean, it would be a thing that I would do. It was very characteristic of me to overreact. So, I mean, I'm just keeping it real here, keeping it honest. So everyone, because it wasn't that they meant me ill or meant my child ill, but everybody was like, calm down, he's fine, he's wonderful, he's fabulous, he's great. And then as it got worse, because it was really only noticeable to me in the beginning, and then as it started to get worse, it was noticeable to more people, and then we got to the point where you couldn't not notice it because he virtually lost all of his language. Wow. But part of that emotional time of that regression is still with me. Like, I'm never going to lose that. I'm always going to be saying to myself, no, listen to yourself when you feel like something is going on and don't listen to everybody else's opinion. But one of the things that would happen, and I've said before on the show that there was a period of time in which my son was like a dry erase board, that we would write stuff on the dry erase board, and when he would sleep, it was as if someone erased it. You know, and certainly that was how the regression started with autism, because he already knew A, B, C, and he would say A, B, C, and when we got to D, to add D to it, I could get him to say A, B, C, D, but he could never link that on his own. It just like wouldn't happen. And then ABCD went away. ABC went away. But so when we would teach him something, especially in the beginning, any time that he had something for even a minute, and then we came back to it and he didn't have it, I too would panic. I literally thought we were right back to that square one and would think, what's going to happen? And it took our wonderful supervisor probably 2 years to convince me of what you just said, which was, this is not an emergency, this is just information that we need to know.
That's exactly
But the house is not on fire. You know, yes, and we started talking about pizza dough, that he was like pizza dough, that you'd push him out and then he'd shrink back a little bit, but he never went back to being a ball.
That's right. That's a great metaphor.
And that I could get my head wrapped around, and I would go, okay, we've had some shrinkage, let's apply some pressure and get it pushed back out and push even further. But I appreciate the fact that you're having those feelings of panic as well.
Yeah, and you know, those feelings are not going to go away for a long time, you know, until who knows when, really, you know. You're just going to sit with and live with, but it doesn't mean that you can't take effective action, and it doesn't mean that you can't do what needs to be done. It's just that you're also going to have those emotions that are going to make it hard and scary.
It's not going to feel comfortable.
It's not going to feel
comfortable. But that's okay. Because we don't have time to get comfortable anyway. There's work to be done, things to do.
Yeah, exactly.
We got places to go, people to see, and things to do. Okay, do we want to take on a perspective one?
Sure.
We have time, a little bit of time. Okay, so this is going to be our last question. How do you get an adult with Asperger's to see someone else's perspective if it's not something that they want to work on?
Right, it's a great question. Well, first of all, I would say any adult sort of has the right to work on stuff that they want to or not, right? That's what it means to be an adult. So you're not going to force someone to be able to do it, right? You're not the boss anymore when the person's an adult. Doesn't mean you can't help them, though, right? Doesn't mean you can't kind of maybe influence the person. So the best way for anyone to change anyone's mind on why they should be doing something is to help them see how it gets them what they want.
Okay.
Right? And that's everybody. You know, that sounds selfish, but it's not really selfish. That's just human nature, okay? So, you know, for example, with this adult, there probably are things that he would like to have in his life that he doesn't have because he's bad at perspective taking. So it might be the case that he has a tough time making or maintaining friendships, and he would like to have more friends than he has. If that's the case, and he's aware of that, that would be a great way to say, well, okay, one step we can take towards establishing more friendships is working on your perspective taking skills.
Yeah.
You know, another thing might be having other people understand him. It might be very irritating to him that people oftentimes don't understand him, because if you really lack perspective taking skills, it means that you don't understand what other people understand. Therefore, it's pretty hard for you to make them understand what you want them to. You know, you get what I'm saying? Like, it's very difficult to communicate if you have zero perspective taking skills. So this individual is probably misunderstood frequently in his day-to-day life. And if that's annoying to him and frustrating to him, well, one great way to work on that would be work on the perspective taking skills. But you have to couch it in terms of something that he cares about, because it's his life. It's his, you know, it's his time that he's going to spend. So it can't be just because you're supposed to learn perspective taking. Can't be just to make other people happy. Well, why would you want to make other people happy? If he genuinely doesn't care about other people being happy, that's his choice.
Right.
You know?
Here's my question. In hearing you talk about this, I'm thinking to myself, can you work on it with them without telling them that you're working on it with them? Can you just find ways to reward them when they do even something remotely like it and then shape it up?
You can certainly try that. You know, you can certainly try it. Reinforcement, positive reinforcement does not depend on awareness for it to work. Okay. We reinforce each other's behavior all the time without even knowing it. Okay.
Right.
So yeah, if you see the individual do anything even remotely similar to empathy or perspective taking or social thinking or social understanding, yeah, reward the heck out of it with anything that he would like. Whether, you know, and it has to be specific to the individual and what they actually want and care about. Give that to him, whether it's extra time doing something that he appreciates or whatever, right? It doesn't have to be a contrived reward. It's just whatever he actually wants and cares about. So you could try that. The problem is with perspective taking skills, they're so challenging, honestly, to learn that it's going to be pretty tough to give that individual enough practice without them having any idea that they're doing it, right?
Okay, so eventually you'd want to definitely be talking about it.
Well, eventually you might need to, yeah.
Okay.
But there's ideas, things like watching movies that make you look at things through other people's shoes, you know? So for example, someone who maybe doesn't have much appreciation for the Holocaust, after they watch a movie like Schindler's List, they probably do. And they probably do have a different understanding for what it's like to be Jewish. You know what I mean? Or, you know, same thing, you name your cause. When you watch a movie that powerfully portrays what it feels like to be one of those people about which the cause is about, it does change your perspective taking with respect to those folks. So it couldn't hurt. I mean, those are kind of like practice opportunities almost, and they are a lot more subtle, right? No one's telling you, think about this other person. You're just showing them what it's like to be the other person.
Okay, great. We're totally out of time, but I thank you so much for being here and all the information you gave us. I don't even think we have time to show all of you all the different ways you can get in touch with us, but please make sure that you check us out over the weekend on the Facebook. We'll have updated information for you there. We won't be doing a live show on Monday, so we'll be back on Tuesday. Don't forget that Bryce Myler will be with us on Tuesday answering those insurance questions. Really looking forward to having her with us, but again, no show on Monday. So we're out of time. Have a wonderful weekend. Please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.